So Kentucky has their governor's race every time 1 year before the presidential election. A lot of people take it as a litmus test, which I see the comparison, but I don't think it's absolutely 100%. The biggest reason why I don't think that Kentucky's debates or Kentucky's governor's race is a litmus test for the presidential race is for many reasons. The low voter turnout rate, right? 13% goes to vote in the primaries in 2015. The other thing is that there are 3 Republican challengers for the incumbent, Matt Bevin. Donald, I haven't heard anybody that's going to run against Donald, so he's not going to have any challengers. He's not going to have to articulate his views or his ideas, and so you're not going to have this robust conversation that Kentucky is having. So where it seems like it's very possible that the Democrats could win just because of, the sort of rotation of the elections, right? The Republicans, if Matt Bevin is to win, that doesn't say that Donald Trump is going to win because Donald Trump didn't have any challengers. Donald Trump isn't having to articulate his views. And so I think that there's, it's not a perfect litmus test. Now there's 4 Democratic candidates and there's 4 Republican candidates. So there's 8 of the 2 parties. I'm not for sure of the independents, but there's 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. So Kentuckians, do your homework, do your due diligence. You should list your issues and then compare your issues to their policy statements. If you're just going to base it on, the advertisements, the TV, whatever the TV tells you, you have to research this yourself because the media is atrocious. They don't get into the, nitty-gritty when it comes to the policies. And so, yeah, do your due diligence, Kentucky. Now, the 4 Democrat candidates is Rodkey Atkins, Andy Brashear, Adam Edelin, and Jeff Young. Again, Jeff Young, Adam Edelin, Andy Brashear, and Rodkey Atkins are running on the Democratic ticket. There was a poll which they left Jeff Young out, which is already discrimination, and it's ridiculous. There's only 4 candidates, and they're going to go ahead and discriminate against one of the 4. But the poll had Andy Brashear winning, the poll by like 57%. Adam Edelin had 17%, Rodkey Atkins 11%, 21% were undecided. So even if you added 21% to Edelin's, Andy Brashear is just going to stomp the shit out of these other 4 candidates. Andy Brashear, I like that he's opposed to child abuse. The main reason, though, why I think he is the front runner is because of his last name. His daddy was governor for 8 years right before Matt Bevin, and then Andy Brashear was also the attorney general. So, he's been in Kentucky politics for quite some time, so he could do the job, right? But just voting for somebody just because you recognize their name. Unfortunately, I did hear that one time that the number one reason why people vote for candidates is because of name recognition. Oh, yeah, I recognize his name. The 4 Republican candidates is Matt Bevin, William E. Woods, Robert Goforth, and Ike Lawrence. Again, Ike Lawrence, Robert Goforth, and William E. Woods, and Matt Bevin. So there's 4 Republican candidates, 4 Democratic candidates. Get to know your candidates before you pick your horse. Now, I just finished talking to Ike Lawrence, and that's amazing that you can call a candidate and they pick up and they actually talk to you. And I had a really thorough discussion, an hour-long conversation with him. He's doing all these debates. He's going to Louisville. There's a debate in Louisville. He wanted to get in the media, and he was complaining that Matt Bevin hasn't shown up to any of these debates. Now, he did say that Robert Goforth is actually a secret Democrat, and he's another Republican in the race, Robert Goforth, and he doesn't like him. He says he's a dick. So Ike Lawrence says that Robert Goforth is a dick, and that's one of the reasons why Matt Bevin is not going to the debates, because, Robert Goforth is a dick. So Matt Bevin doesn't want to talk to Robert Goforth. I'll just go on and actually just talk about Ike Lawrence, okay? So Ike Lawrence, these are his policy positions. I'm going to start out with the issues I support, and then the neutral ones, and then the critical ones, the ones I don't like, okay? But I want to, just right off the bat, Ike Lawrence picked up the phone. His phone number is 859-351-2142, 859-351-2142. So call him up. Call him up. He'll talk to you. You want to talk about this issue? You want to talk about that issue? And that says something to me. That says that he's talking to the common man. He's talking to regular, average Kentuckians. Anybody wants to call him, he'll talk to you. And, that's a good thing. And then on the opposite, if you don't talk to common, folks, then you're just elitist and stuck up and you're out of touch with the common folks. So it's great that he picked up, and if the other candidates don't pick up, that should tell you something. I like IkeForGovernor.com is his website, so check him out. I like IkeForGovernor.com. I read his survey that he gave to the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, and there was Facebook. He had posted some Facebook posts, so I compiled a whole bunch of his policy points, and then I just asked him, is this true? Did you support this? Did you not support this? What's your feelings on this and that? So to begin with, Ike Lawrence. He's a 63-year-old man. He, at 2 years of age, he was born in Philadelphia. He goes to Lexington, Kentucky. So he's been in Kentucky his whole life, right? He's not even going to remember Philly. He's only 2 years old, right? It's like Bevan. Bevan was born in Denver, Colorado, and then he moves to New Hampshire. Well, what, fidelity, what loyalty does he have for Colorado? He's born in Denver, right? So that's where he was born. I'd like to see a birth certificate on that just to make sure. But he's born in Denver, but he's raised in New Hampshire. So he's more of a New Hampshire guy, right? That's where he was raised. But Ike Lawrence has been in Kentucky essentially, for 6 decades. Now his resume goes on and on. Ike Lawrence has resume just goes on and on. So he's been doing political stuff, and he's been here and there, and he's done a lot of jobs. He's a certified teacher. He's a landlord. He's in the real estate. He said he built new tennis courts for the Henry Clay High School, brand new tennis courts. Then he was a nonpartisan candidate for mayor of Lexington last year. Ballotpedia literally has nothing listed for Ike Lawrence. So again, Ballotpedia is, just like that poll, they're going ahead and discriminating against Ike Lawrence and Jeff Young. Ike Lawrence says he's the only businessman in the top 6 candidates. He also has 3 kids and 2 grandchildren. Some of the political stuff he has done as an outsider of government, he went ahead and he fought for a bridge. There's the Jefferson Street Bridge. He fought to stop it from being demolished. And he said that it wasn't saved, but he was able to save the street right next to it. So he's for the current infrastructure. We already have buildings and bridges. Let's keep that infrastructure. He also mentions that he is okay with free government buildings. So Lexington, there's this big debacle in Lexington where they were going to vacate the debt-free government center and then get a lease and then pay a whole bunch of money to go ahead and tie the children and grandchildren of Kentucky to a lease. But he said he saved $200 million by pressuring them to not leave the debt-free government center. So, he didn't like that folks were moving out. It's a debt-free government. So he saved, Lexington $200 million. He saved that street, and he's an outsider. So I understand, when you don't have government power, when you have government power, you got not just influence, but you got $1 million budget, right? Millions and millions of dollars. So this is, these are remarkable accomplishments, and good for Ike Lawrence for saving the street next to the bridge and for keeping Lexington government inside the debt-free government center. Now, he had posted something about 1/3 of all the U.S. troops that had died in Vietnam, they died in the first 3 months of 1968. He said 68 was a terrible year for the United States. You had Martin Luther King get shot, Robert F. Kennedy get shot, and then the Tet Offensive wiped out 1/3 of the total deaths of Vietnam. And he doesn't think that the Vietnam War should have been continued. He believes after the Tet Offensive in '68, that's when we should have got out. That's when the U.S. should have got out of there. So I agree with him on that. The Vietnam War was a total debacle, and so the fact that he's not saying we should have stayed in there forever and ever, but once you've acknowledged that there's a mistake, pull out. He also mentioned the draft, so you had all these kids getting drafted and then they're getting killed in '68. So that is remarkable. Out of all the troops, I've heard 75,000, but 58,000 was the number that he used for the total amount of Americans that were killed. There were 4 million Vietnamese that were killed, 4 million. So the whole premise of the war, to fight them because of communism or what was it? It was all bullshit. But, you know, I'm not sure if that's what he believes, but he does say that we should have got out of Vietnam, and he's right about that. Ike hits Matt Bevin pretty hard. He criticizes Matt Bevin because he says that Matt Bevin keeps chasing these outside major corporations because he wants, you know, more Toyota plants. He seems to think that everything is going to be a Toyota plant. Any corporation that comes in, it's going to be as successful as Toyota. Toyota provides great jobs, and they're also producing, you know, vehicles for people. So he wants to go out and get those big corporations. And the big corporations, he's failed. They try to get a battery plant in Pikeville. They try to get an aluminum plant in Greenup County, and he couldn't get them. So he spent all that time and all that money. He said he got $30 million from the counties, $30 million. And, you know, if you used $50,000 as startup seeding money, well, that's, you know, you could have, rescued or helped out 500 Kentuckians start their own small business. So Ike Lawrence is more focused on developing Kentucky. Make, you know, Kentucky good for Kentuckians. Don't bring out these outsider corporations because it's a gamble, and if they come in, you have no idea if they're going to produce all the jobs that they promise. And so it's better also small businesses provide a lot of the tax revenues, and small businesses also provide jobs. So he's creating jobs, he's creating tax revenue, and he's helping Kentuckians. So compared to Matt Bevin, who's going to India, he said he was there for the federal government, not even for Kentucky. So he's going to India, and he's going to all these different places to get these major corporations in, and he's working on something for Meade County now. But it hasn't been working, and really Ike Lawrence's focus wouldn't be on trying to get, you know, your big Walmarts or whatever into Kentucky as much as getting small mom-and-pop shops, getting entrepreneurs an opportunity, a chance. In America, you have to work or you got to start a business. You got to make money somehow in order to live. And so the fact that he's focused on small businesses, you know, that's focused on the little man. That's focused on the common Kentuckian, the average Kentuckian. So anybody that has good ideas, he considered those ideas. That wasn't a platform plank that he agreed or that he's running on, but when I mentioned it to him, he said that it was better than spending $30 million for nothing. And there's no transparency, so he has no idea where that $30 million went. They definitely, Pikeville didn't get a battery plant, and Greenup County didn't get an aluminum plant. So where did that $30 million go? Now, overall, Ike Lawrence says that he likes Matt Bevin. He thinks he's a B candidate, but Ike Lawrence says he's the A+ candidate. Matt Bevin brags about creating 50,000 jobs in Kentucky. That is an embarrassing number. But Ike says that's very small, and you don't even know if that's true. He says it could just be a result of Trump's economy more so than Bevin's policies. But I feel like 50,000 jobs, there's 4 million Kentuckians. You only created 50 jobs? That's, you know, very, very little. And so that's the difference between Bevin and Ike Lawrence. Ike Lawrence is going to focus on Kentucky for Kentucky instead of trying to bring out these multinational corporations from India or Timbuktu or wherever the hell, especially since these projects have fallen through. So he likes Bevin, but he disagrees with him on the policies of economic development by trying to entice big corporations to come to Kentucky. Instead, he'd rather create corporations homemade. He'd rather have homemade corporations that Kentuckians develop themselves. So Ike Lawrence believes in small business development and entrepreneurs. He thinks it's better than enticing major corporations to come to Kentucky. Ike Lawrence also says that he supports all Kentuckians, even if they're gay. So he supports all Kentucky people, even if they're gay. That makes him better than the bigot Matt Bevin. Matt Bevin, he did something, he passed something about gay folks, or said something about gay folks. Yeah, the speech. Matt Bevin had a speech where he said, the quote, the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants, which is Thomas Jefferson. It's an American Revolutionary quote. So I think it's a badass quote. That's all right. But in that speech, he says, well, look what the Democrats are doing. They're, doing transgender. They're bending gender definitions, and they're killing babies with all these abortions. That's infanticide. So he's bringing out abortion. He's talking about the transphobic people. And then he said that they also did don't ask, don't tell. So why is Matt Bevin criticizing don't ask, don't tell? That's a compromise. That's not saying gays should be or not should. Saying gays should be allowed in the military, but they don't have to say if they're gay or not. Just don't ask, don't tell. Just if you're gay, fine, be gay. And so that was a compromise in the right direction, but the fact that Matt Bevin is going to look at that as an example for, something the bad things the Democrats are doing. Look what the Democrats are doing, right? They passed don't ask, don't tell. That was a good thing. It was a compromise, so you would think that, it's kind of halfway towards Bevin, but Bevin's like, he's not going to tolerate that. So Matt Bevin is a bigot. Matt Bevin, I don't believe Matt Bevin likes homosexuals at all. It'd be interesting to hear what he says about gay folks. The media of Kentucky don't really hit Matt Bevin very hard. In 2015, they were fawning over him. They, the NPR or the Associated Press, or Reuters, I think it's Associated Press, and the Courier Journal with Joe Girth and whoever that Associated Press guy, they were lined up waiting to talk to Matt Bevin because Matt Bevin said, go out there and line up when they had a candidate, for governor that they just completely ignored. So the media of Kentucky picks the winners and they pick the losers. The media is very powerful. Be suspicious of the media because they have an agenda. Ultimately, if it bleeds, it leads, so they're sensational. They're not going to get deep into the policy and say, well, this is the policy, that's the policy, like I would. They are just going to say, oh, my God, did you hear what he said? Did you hear that one thing? And just talk about one or two of the, major, the sensational bullshit instead of actually getting down to the nitty-gritty. So Ike Lawrence supports all Kentuckians, even if they're gay. He believes in small business development. He believes we should have got out of Vietnam. He wants to protect the infrastructure that we have here. He's also the only one that's going to the debates. So he's the only Republican candidate for governor who showed up for the League of Women's Voters Forum. And he said that one of them or two of them might show up, but essentially the Republicans are not doing like they did in 2015 where you had 4 candidates and they had 4 equal airtime and they went, from place to place, and it was more of a fair discussion. So it's not a great discussion, don't get me wrong, but there's some discussion, right? So people say, oh, that guy is running against him, what does he stand for? So even though they're not being presented with the equal amount of airtime and the equal amount of access that they had in 2015, there is a conversation that's going. So Bevin hasn't been going to any of the Republican debates. He even skipped out of the KET debate. So he's not even debating. He don't even want, anybody to challenge him or his ideas. Even if you disagree, then just say why you disagree, right? I mean, what's the problem? He doesn't want to be challenged. Mitch McConnell treated him like that, and so now he's becoming, the establishment candidate, whereas he was part of a fair process in 2015. Now he's the one that's in charge. He's the one that's got the power, and he's not interested in having a nice, robust conversation about policy amongst his Republican colleagues. Ike Lawrence also is pointing out Kentucky uglies, which this is fascinating. If you don't point out a problem, what's the chances of that problem getting fixed? 0. So he's talking about Kentucky's bread and butter issues, more jobs, just like the rest of them. But he's also talking about the big problems that Kentucky has, such as diabetes. Kentucky's number one, or in the top 10 when it comes to diabetes, top obesity rates, heart diseases, all cancers, dental problems, car accidents. So he kind of just listed a whole bunch of things there, but there's a lot of problems that need to be addressed. He also said smoking's a problem, and then he wants to clean up the lakes and the streams. So he's pointing out that there's obesity and diabetes and heart disease, cancers, dental problems, car accidents. And he has one solution. I think we need to think more about these problems and what we could do. His solution is we need to stop giving high fructose corn syrup to babies. So he's sitting there saying that there's some really crappy mothers out there and fathers that are giving soda pop, Mountain Dew to their children. Instead of giving them healthy juice and water, Kentucky children are getting Mountain Dew put into their bottles. And so that's why when they grow up, they're getting diabetes and obese, heart disease, cancers, dental problems, and car accidents. So it's just the overall, him pointing out the problems that Kentucky has is important, because if you don't address the problem, then you're not going to fix it. So he said for the last 4 years, all Kentucky's talked about is the opioid addiction, right? The opioids, the Percocets, the Oxycontin, and, the opioid. He's got a plan to address the opioids and also the broken public pension system. But that's it. For the last 4 years, the biggest conversation has been about opioids, the pension system. But what about the obesity? What about the cancer? What about the dental problems, car accidents, smoking, the dirty lakes and streams? And, of course, he wants to get more jobs. So Kentucky has a lot of problems. That's actually the tip of the iceberg. But at least Ike Lawrence is pointing them out. He's pointing them out. So he's right. He's right that these are other problems, and he's also right that these problems aren't even being discussed. So there's no chance of them being fixed if the problem isn't even addressed as a problem. After it's addressed, then you need to get a plan, right? So you need a plan. But you need to first say, is this a problem, right? You got all these fat people dying of diabetes and heart attacks and cancer, and they have no teeth. The teeth are falling out. They're wrecking into everybody. Car accidents, lots of smoking. Ike Lawrence wants to cap campaign spending to $100,000. So he wants to cap campaign spending to $100,000. I think it's a great idea, because how can any regular folks compete in that kind of environment? I think public finance elections is exactly how you go ahead and solve that problem. But he wasn't for public finance elections, but he does want to cap campaign spending to $100,000. So he wants to take big money out of politics, right? You can only spend this much money for a campaign. That would make it more reasonable, and I agree with that. I think that's a great idea, cap campaign spending. Ike Lawrence also wants more athletic scholarships to Kentucky high school students. So more scholarships. He's saying athletic scholarships, but, any scholarships is good. So he wants to provide more athletic scholarships. Basketball is a religion in Kentucky. I was a Wildcat. I grew up as a Wildcat. He also, some interesting ideas. At first I was kind of like, what's this about? Ike Lawrence wants to make college campuses wet. He wants to bring alcohol back into the colleges. The Eastern Kentucky and UK, University of Kentucky, they used to be big party big party schools. They were known as big party schools. And essentially it seems like they've overcorrected, and they've cracked down so hard that they, the logical part of this that sort of made me think, okay, there's a logic to it. So if you're old enough to fight and die, you should be old enough to drink. He says if you're in the military and you're 18 years of age, you should be allowed to drink. So he wants to lower the beer drinking age to 19 years of age for the general population, 18 years of age for military personnel. And for underage drinking, he wants to raise the .02 threshold to .08. So he wants to make it, not a huge hammer, when it comes to alcohol. And the logic is, when you ban alcohol, then you're going to have college campuses, you're going to have parties in the neighborhoods, and then the parties, can bring damage. And so he's sitting there saying he wants to save the neighborhoods from the off-campus parties. So I think he's pro-alcohol, he's pro-drinking, and he says alcohol isn't a drug. He says that alcoholism isn't a disease, which, you know, I disagree with him on those things, but I like freedom, so I'm okay with, you know, drinking. That's fine. If you're an adult, you should be allowed to drink, but you go to college and they say, oh, you can't drink because you're not 21 years of age. And the logic is, you know, have them, you know, drink on campus instead of trying to find these party spots. And, you know, kids are going to party, they're going to have a good time, and they're going to find, you know, these spots. And so he's sitting there saying, essentially, I don't want to say legalize alcohol, but he wants to make alcohol more accessible to college students. And, you know, it's not a huge issue for me, but I agree with it. Judges, they make over $100,000 per year, and I think they get pensions for the rest of their life, 100% of the pension. So if they work for 10 years, which is where tenure comes from, which he taught me that. I didn't know that. But if they work for 10 years, then I think that they get pensions for the rest of their life. And Ike Lawrence said they get 100% of their salary, whereas other workers, like road workers, only get 10% of the salary that they earned, and then teachers get 50% or 60% of the salary that they earn. Judges get 100%. So they get in there, they get elected, they work for 10 years, and then for the rest of their lives, they're going to get over $100,000 per year. They're going to get a big old fat check. So it's interesting that conservatives love to hate tax dollars that go to help folks, but they're going to say, oh, just give all of our tax dollars for endless corruption. Yeah, that's fine. You know, corrupt judges in the injustice system, they get in there, they just take, the rich folks, the lawyered folks, or the cops' word over anybody else's, and you're going to, they're corrupt, they're wealthy, and we're just going to give them what? Another $1 million? Here's $1 million. Who gives a shit? We're conservatives. We tax the shit out of you, and then we just waste the money by giving, $1 million to people who don't even need $1 million. I could invest $100,000 and take care of myself for the rest of my life. So the fact that these judges are crying after 10 years of judging that they need to be paid for the rest of their life, I mean, shit, why not just take all the homeless property, all the property from the homeless people, and just give it to the judges, right, conservatives? He talked about the pension issue. He had a specific plan from the Bluegrass Institute. He said Jim Waters, and then he had an opioid plan. There was another person he referred to, which is smart and intelligent, right? If you don't know the thing, then say, well, who are you going to rely on in order to get it solved? What are the plans? So he's got a plan for the opioid addiction, essentially it's the Bluegrass Institute's policy. He mentioned a couple things. I asked him if he would just, cut the pensions, because there was a conservative that said that, just cut the pensions. And there is something to that. I mean, my God, we're going to make sure, right, there's 401k, Social Security. They say they don't get Social Security, so they need to get all the money from the state of Kentucky. What about 401k? Can't they, invest in their own retirement savings program? There's no universal health care, but there's a retirement saving program for state workers. I don't know. I don't have much sympathy for the, millionaire judges who are getting paid over $100,000 every year, even though they ain't doing shit. They ain't working. They don't have a job. They had a job fucking people over. So just give them millions of dollars, right? Who gives a shit? Nobody. Who gives a shit? Let's tax the shit out of Kentucky and just give it to the corrupt. Is that better? Now, how about cut out the corruption and then use that money for shit that people need? The schools, the hospitals, the roads, the job opportunities, the business, the seeding money for entrepreneurs. Now, he mentioned some things about University of Kentucky, and I'm not going to get to the neutral ideas, which I was like, okay, that's interesting. Some good, some bad, and then there's some criticism of his policy, so I'll have to get to that later. But he points out that that only 29% of the freshmen who go in the UK graduate in 4 years. That is abysmal. The retention rate is awful. So 7 out of 10 of the people who go to UK don't graduate. What the hell is going on? How come UK isn't able to graduate their students? Is it the students? Is it the public education system? What the hell is going on with that? That is the flagship school, UK. In UK, 29% of the freshmen graduate in 4 years. Only 29%. So that's absolutely ridiculous. So he's pointing out the problems of Kentucky, and we